welcome to Sammy C Press. In this video, we're going to talk about some of our favorite books from our high school years on. We enjoyed reading some of what is considered classic literature. Here are a few of our favorites that we think you might enjoy as well. Before you dive into these books, though, it is important to remember that opening a book is a gateway to a different time period, which can seem like an entirely different world. Before you read a book, pay attention to the year the book was written in, as well as the year the book is based in. What are the struggles of the day? What were the attitudes of many? What was going on socially and politically? For us today, we see women authors on a regular basis. But in Jane Austen's day, it was not acceptable to be a female author. That's why many used men's names as a pen name, except for Jane Austen. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn book, for example, is set 20 to 30 years before the Emancipation Proclamation. So before you dig in, put yourself in the shoes of the author. See how brave many of these authors were for sharing such stories with us. Be sure that you read the unabridged versions as well. This means the books will not be shortened. The first book is called Roughing It, a personal narrative by Mark Twain. This is a bit of a travelogue and is semi-autobiographical. It is written by one of America's favorite humorists. The book follows the travels of young Mark Twain through the American West during the years of 1861 and 1867. Lines like, "I was the deadest man who ever lived," will stick with you. Fun fact, U.S. astronauts Frank Borman and Jim Lovell read Roughing It out loud to pass time aboard NASA's Gemini 7 mission. It was a 14-day-long Earth orbital mission in December 1965. This is a prequel of this first travel book, The Innocents Abroad, which was published in 1869. I have not read that one yet, but it is on my reading list. Another book we enjoyed is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This, is an amazing book. It was published in 1884, but it is set in Missouri in the 1830s or 1840s. This was a time when Missouri was considered a slave state. It is told from the point of view of a barely literate teen named Huck Finn, who fakes his own death to escape his abusive drunken father. He encounters a runaway slave named Jim, and the two embark on a raft journey down the Mississippi River. It is on this river trip that Huck realizes how wrong slavery truly is. He is able to see firsthand that the lies he has heard his entire life are not true. Mark Twain might have been thinking about his own experience as he wrote about Huckleberry Finn, and how it was not until he was older that he even started to question slavery. Mark Twain, in his normal satire-ish way, helps us to see that even a barely literate teen can see how wrong slavery is. Yet many were unable to see or accept the truth. The next author is Jules Verne. We have the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea book. It was published in 1870. Did you know the title refers to the distance, not the depth, traveled under the various seas? 20,000 metric leagues, or 80,000 kilometers, over 40,000 nautical miles, nearly twice the circumference of the Earth. The book is set in 1866, when ships are being attacked by a mysterious sea monster of some sort. Some say the giant is a narwhal. The government assembles a group to destroy the monster, and Professor Onyx, a French marine biologist, is the one who narrates the story. Ned Land, a Canadian whaler and master harpooner, joins the adventure. Did you know that Jules Verne was at first going to be a lawyer? Well, what changed? Verne had an intense love for adventure and a bit of an obsession with science. So that passion won out over being a lawyer. It blows my mind to think about the fact that Verne includes machines in his books that were really not even ideas or on scientific minds at the time. Some of his ideas actually became a reality. The submarine navigated by Captain Nemo was before submarines were even used to explore the sea. Jules Verne was able to imagine an electric-powered vessel. Verne was said to take inspiration from models he saw on display at the World's Fair in Paris in 1867, as well as scientific knowledge about electricity and battery power. Now, I'm not saying submarines did not exist, and no, Jules Verne did not invent the submarine. It was in 1578 that a British mathematician named William Bourne first conceived the idea of a submarine. But the first one was not built until 1620. It was built by a man named Cornelius, and I know I'm going to mess up his last name, I am really sorry, Drabel, a Dutch inventor. There is an interesting history of submarines that I will leave you to discover. I briefly went down a rabbit hole myself. What an amazing mind Jules Verne possessed, one of which we get to see a glimpse of in his writings. He has other books we've enjoyed as well, ones like The Mysterious Island. This is during the American Civil War, when 5 Northern prisoners of war make the decision to escape the war by hijacking a hot air balloon. Drifting through the night, they wake to find themselves marooned on a desert island. But they are not alone. Another book is Around the World in 80 Days, about a Victorian gentleman named Phileas Fogg, who wagers half his fortune on an outstanding proposition that he can travel all the way around the world in just 80 days. Fogg and his French valet, Passepartout, circle the globe by train and ship. On their heels is Scotland Yard's detective, convinced that Fogg is a criminal invading justice, and has vowed to stop them in their tracks. The next book is Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. This book was published in 1883. This is one of our favorites here at Sammy C Press. It's about a boy named Jim Hawkins who finds a map to pirates' gold and goes to search for buried treasure, with the help of an old sea captain named Billy Bones. The relationship between John Silver and Jim is one that can lead to many discussions. Another book we enjoyed is that of Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Oliver is orphaned and eventually runs away from the workhouse, joining a group of criminals. Life has not been easy for Oliver. Charles Dickens' writings is very heavy at times and can be a bit on the darker side. Sammy C number 2 really loves Nicholas Nickleby. But for me personally, some of his books are a bit emotionally heavy and leave me feeling rather yucky for many days. So I don't read a whole lot of Charles Dickens. Jane Austen books are also a favorite here. Sense and Sensibility was published in 1811. This was Jane's debut novel. It's interesting that 3 days before the book was published, she wrote a poem when stretched on one's bed. It was about lying in bed with a headache. Do you think maybe she had a headache because she was so nervous about her first book being published? This was a huge step, since women authors were not considered acceptable at the time. I think Jane Austen was super brave. Many women writers use men's names when publishing books at that time. The Bronte sisters, for example, used male names. Jane used the term by a lady. I think this pen name gives us a glimpse into the incredible and brave woman that Jane Austen truly was. In the book, Sense and Sensibility, it follows the lives of the Dashwood sisters and their widowed mother. They are forced to leave their home despite their father trying to make arrangements for them to be cared for. Henry Dashwood extracts a promise from John, Henry's son by his first marriage, to take care of his half-sisters. But John's wife, Fanny, persuades her husband that caring for them would diminish their own portion of the inheritance that they are supposed to pass on to their son. John and Fanny move in as the new owners of Norland Park, where the Dashwood women are treated as unwelcome guests by Fanny. Fanny's brother, Edward, visits Norland, and his kindness immediately endears him to the Dashwood family, one in particular. Miss Dashwood moves her family to Barton Cottage in Devonshire, on the estate owned by her cousin, Sir John Middleton. There we will meet characters like Colonel Brandon and John Willoughby. You'll have to read for yourself to see how it plays out. But remember that Jane Austen uses satire to make fun of trivial things in the 18th century society. So keep a lookout for ways that she uses this. And maybe you can even ask yourself, why would she make fun of certain things? The next book is Pride and Prejudice. This book was Jane Austen's second book to be published. It was published in 1813. Some do not realize this, but Pride and Prejudice is not a mushy love story, but instead it is full of satire. Satire is a literary work holding up human vices or follies in ridicule or scorn. Satire uses wit, irony, or sarcasm used to expose or discredit vice or folly. Austen wholeheartedly satirizes social issues such as class, love, as well as women's position in society. Through Austen's characters, she focuses on social issues of the day, as well as injustice, along with the power held over women. Austen was facing and challenging society head-on. So when you read through the book, keep these thoughts in mind, and you will notice Miss Bennet's reactions to Bingley coming to Netherfield. See how Elizabeth and Darcy respond to each other. What are your thoughts about Mr. Collins and his obsession with Lady Catherine de Bourgh? So much to enjoy and think about in this novel. There is a reason that it has been a success ever since it was published, and it has never went out of print. The next book by Jane Austen is Emma. This was published in 1815. Emma Woodhouse loves to play matchmaker. She is bolstered by the successful marriage between her former governess, Miss Taylor, and the widower, Mr. Weston. But will she have the same supposed success with Harriet? As you read, look for ways that Jane uses satire with different characters. Emma herself as well as Miss Elton. The next book is Little Women by Louise May Alcott. This book was published in 1880 as one novel. This is one of Sammy C No. 3's favorite books. The book is classified as an autobiographical or semi-autobiographical novel. This is because it is loosely based on the lives of Louisa and her 3 sisters. This is a beautiful coming-of-age story. The story follows the lives of 4 March sisters as they pass from childhood into womanhood. Did you know that she wrote the book in just 10 weeks? She even forgot to eat and sleep. She was so focused. She worked as a paid companion and governess at times. She also sold stories to help pay the bills. She was not afraid of work and took on many different jobs, like that of a laundress, a servant, and a seamstress. As a child, Alcott wanted to help her family to escape poverty. That is something Little Women helped make possible. We are grateful that she never gave up on her dream. She also refused to marry off Joe to Laurie in the book, despite the many letters she received from fans. Little Women as well has never been out of print. Now, we have never read the next 2 books in the series, but here they are in case you want to look into them. The first one is Little Men, which was written in 1871. This is a story about Jo and her husband. They opened a school for boys in their home. Similar to Little Women, this is about the little men growing from childhood into adulthood and the lessons they learn along the way. The third book in the Little Woman series is called Jo's Boys. It was published in 1886. It follows the lives of Jo's adopted sons who are navigating their way into adulthood. This is the final book in the series. Did you know that Louisa May Alcott was also a poet? Did you know that she used various pen names? Under the name of A.M. Bernard, she wrote sensational and thrilling stories. As Flora Fairfield, she wrote romantic stories. These are not the only names she used. There are books out there that are suspected to have been written by her as well, but scholars can't be sure. The next book that Sammy C No. 2 loved was Scaramouche. This book is rich in plot and intertwined, but I do not want to spoil anything. An audiobook might be a bit easier because some of the character names can be tricky. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is one of our favorites. Harper Lee draws inspiration for this book from her childhood experience. Her father was a lawyer, and in one case he defended two black men who were accused of murder and found guilty. The novel begins in 1933 in Macomb, a small town in Alabama during the Great Depression. Jean Louise Finch, also known as Scout, and her brother Jim, are raised by their father Atticus, who was a lawyer. He takes on a controversial case. It is both a coming-of-age story paired with a very ugly time, demonstrating the consequences of prejudice as well as racism. Ghost at the Watchman is a sequel to Harper Lee's famous To Kill a Mockingbird, but it's important to know that she first attempted to publish this manuscript in 1957. Jean Louise, also known as Scout, is 26 years old at the beginning of this book. Scout stands out as different since she's still not a mother, and this is during the baby boom following the years of World War II. I have not yet read this book, but from the research, it is set in the Deep South in the 1950s. At the time, this was considered a radical book, a novel that speaks about a young woman's ability to stand up on her own moral feet and make decisions that are right for her in her own life. Jean Louise struggles to see where she fits in Macomb as a modern woman and born and bred Southerner. A watchman is someone who serves as a moral compass. This helps in the face of temptation and spitefulness. And throughout the novel, Jean Louise must learn how to become her own watchman rather than relying on others to guide her. The book highlights a time when America's social and political landscape is ugly. It includes the South's reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling on Brown versus Board of Education, which declared segregation unconstitutional. There is a bit of info if you want to decide to read it. This book is also on my reading list. The next book is The Princess Bride. This is a classic. It's a tale of true love and high adventure, pirates, princesses, giants, miracles, fencing, and a frightening assortment of wild beasts. What more does a reader need? It is fun, and I know you'll enjoy it. The next author is Alexandre Dumas. This is a beloved author of many. He has written books like The Count of Monte Cristo and The Three Musketeers. Did you know that The Three Musketeers is part of a series? It's The Three Musketeers, then The 20 Years After, then The Viscount of Day, and then I'm going to spell it, Bragelonne, because I know I would pronounce that wrong. Then the next book is Louise de la Valliere. And then the final book is The Man in the Iron Mask. The final three in the series were originally published as one novel, which was so enormous that publishers now split them into separate volumes. I've not read them yet, but they definitely are on my reading list. The next book is by Gaston Leroux. It is The Phantom of the Opera. This romantic drama tells the story of Eric, a mysterious phantom who haunts the Paris Opera House. The phantom falls in love with Christine, a beautiful soprano, and begins tutoring her in her music. But Eric is enraged to learn that Christine is in love with her childhood friend, Raoul. For those of you who love mystery, there is a book called Murder on the Orient Express that was written by Agatha Christie. It is one of the most widely read mysteries of all time. In Murder on the Orient Express, a baffling murder occurs on a train trapped in a snowstorm, and the legendary detective is called to solve the case. Employing his impressive deductive reasoning, he carefully examines all the passengers on the train, picks apart their statements, and tries to find motives. Not an easy feat with such a sophisticated crowd. Did you know that Agatha Christie was possibly dyslexic? Christie often claimed herself to be the slow one in the family. She found writing and spelling to be very difficult. Christie also had what's known as dysgraphia. Her dysgraphia was so troublesome that she couldn't balance her own checkbook. She began writing when she was 13 years old. She is one of the most prolific mystery novelists of all time. She had an amazing imagination. She enjoyed spending time with her imaginary friends. She taught herself to read against her mother's wishes. She had little to no formal education until she was around 15 or 16 when she went to finishing school in Paris. Do you know that she wrote her books from the end to the beginning? Hidden Figures is one of Sammy C. and my favorite movies. But did you know there's a book? There's a Hidden Figures Young Readers Edition, which is between 9 and 12 years of age. But then there's Hidden Figures, The American Dream, an untold story of the black women mathematicians who helped win the space race. Both of these books are by Margaret Lee Shetterly. It follows the true story of the black female mathematicians at NASA. These four amazing women, their careers, their challenges, and how they overcame what tried to get in their way is an amazing, powerful, and well-written story. These women's beautiful minds are what fueled some of America's greatest achievements in space. Definitely a must-read. The next book I know you'll enjoy is All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. This is an 8-book series. In this first volume, we follow James as he is a newly qualified vet. 2 books that are not classics but that I really enjoyed were The Help by Catherine Stockett. The Help by Catherine Stockett is a historical fiction novel. This is one that I enjoyed very much, even though it may not be considered classic literature at this point. These 3 women, seemingly from different worlds, come together for a clandestine project that put them all at risk. And why? Because they're suffocating within the lines that define their town and their times. Lines are going to be crossed. To find out more of this interesting story, check out The Help. Another book I really enjoy is called The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. Lily is haunted by memories of her late mother and abused by her father. At 14, she decides to run away with her friend and caregiver, Rosaline, to South Carolina. They go to a town that holds memories of her mother and her past. There, Lily meets the Boatwright sisters. You'll have to read more to find out the adventure that Lily experiences and the truth that she finds. Now this, obviously, is not a high school reading book, but I wanted to mention this. The Tales of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. Did you know that when she was a teenager, she had a journal? And that journal was in code. And it was not until 20 years after that it was cracked. And you can actually look at her journal and read it for yourself online. So I wanted to mention that because I thought that was a really cool little thing to be able to do. Some other books that friends of ours have enjoyed but we have not yet checked out are ones like Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte and Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, as well as Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. There are many treasures out there to find and discover, so enjoy digging and reading. Until next time, there.